The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the America Walks webinar, Creating Livable Communities for All Ages. I'm Emily Barr, Walking College Program Manager at America Walks, and I'll be your webinar facilitator today. I'm also here with my colleague, Susan Lyon, who will be running the tech behind the scenes. To start, I'd like to go ahead and thank our generous sponsors without whom this and similar presentations would not be possible. These include the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the America Public Health Association, the Everybody Walk Collaborative, and others whose logos you see here on your screen. You should see a panel on your screen that looks something like this. It's equipped with the field labeled questions, and this is how you'll enter questions for our speakers or raise any concerns about technical difficulties you're having as the webinar progresses. We'll do our best to answer your technical problems as they arise, but we'll hold off on answering the questions you submit until the Q&A at the end of the program. With us today to present on the topic at hand, we're very pleased to have a great panel of speakers, including Catherine Hunnanen, Senior Manager of Special Initiatives at the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, Francesca Petricolo, Deputy Project Manager at PED-PDX in Portland, and Richard Zeitlow, Vice President of Lamar's Main Street. And Catherine and Richard are running a little bit late, so we're going to go ahead and get started today with Francesca and hope that the other two arrive in short order. So Francesca, take it away.
Great, thanks for having me. So PED-PDX, so first of all, I work for the City of Portland, Bureau of Transportation, where I'm a long-range transportation planner. And PED-PDX is Portland's citywide pedestrian plan. It will prioritize crosswalks, sidewalks, and other investments to make walking safer and more comfortable across our whole city. And the plan will also identify key strategies and tools we'll use to make Portland a truly great walking city for everyone. So the need for pedestrian infrastructure improvements is virtually infinite, but public resources are not. So we need to send our money to the areas where there's the most need first, and this process is all about that. So PED-PDX is helping to identify the locations where resources will be able to make the most impact based on our community priorities. Some areas of the city have beautiful pedestrian infrastructure, and often when folks think of Portland, they think of this beautiful pedestrian infrastructure like we have downtown in the top photo here. But other areas of the city still lack basics, even in areas where people really rely on walking the most. So we call these areas of the city underserved. They're underserved by pedestrian infrastructure such as sidewalks and safe crossings. So I also want to note that we're doing all of this work right now as we speak. So it's in progress, and it includes a pedestrian network needs analysis, which is identifying citywide needs, including crossings, walking paths, and other pedestrian infrastructure needs, and a citywide prioritization framework for directing the public funding to our network needs. So part of designing a city for 8 to 80, or as we say, all ages and abilities, is it's really about getting everyone involved in shaping our plan. These are a bunch of our community advisory committee members who are helping us. Walking is pretty big here, and we had over 260 applications citywide from community members all over the city who wish to serve on our PED-PDX Community Advisory Committee. So we now have 25 amazing, diverse community members representing all parts of the city in a range of different abilities. And they really put their whole selves into helping us with this plan, and we take our direction from them. We did a huge public survey with more than 5,000 responses citywide to guide our priorities for the plan. This public feedback from the survey and the help from our Community Advisory Committee shaped our mission, vision, and goals for PED-PDX and the prioritization framework. So the mission is through PED-PDX, the City of Portland affirms walking as a fundamental human right and the most fundamental means of transportation. PED-PDX ensures walking is a safe, accessible, and attractive experience for everyone in Portland by putting pedestrians at the forefront of city policy, investments, and design. And our vision is Portland is truly a great walking city for everyone. So from community input, PED-PDX developed 4 goals, and everything we do with this plan will be in pursuit of fulfilling these 4 goals. It's equitable and inclusive, safe and secure, comfortable and inviting, and healthy people and environment. And you can read more about the exact language we perfected with our community. But really, these kind of the themes of priority that guided our methodology for citywide needs prioritization really pointed to equity, safety, and demand. And this is our desired outcome. And that really responds to what we heard from the community in our survey. So we're working to be as responsive as possible to the community. And these are the top things that folks said for the kinds of places that are most important to improve for walking in Portland, and they directly relate to the equity, safety, and demand piece that we're focusing on and that we made our goals about. So we realized that when we ultimately prioritize where our investments go, and the investments are going to the areas with the most needs first, not everyone's going to be a winner, right? Not everyone is going to end up with a sidewalk in front of their house. So we need to be able to elevate Portlanders' understanding of the range and diversity of needs that exist in the city, so they better understand how our resources are going to be prioritized. And we really wanted to raise compassion so that people could get outside of maybe what their own experience is in their own area of town and what they understand, and better understand just that range and diversity that exists in our city. So we partnered with the University of Oregon School of Journalism and Communication with the support from the America Walks Community Change Microgrant Award. And students spent the term working with members of the community from different parts of the city and with different abilities as they both showed us and narrated what walking means to them and what it's like to walk where they do, as who they are, and what their hopes for Portland as a great walking city for all actually are. So they profiled 8 different people, and I strongly encourage you to go to our website at pedpdx.com and check out these videos. We used them to launch a social media campaign that has been quite powerful for us. We've received a lot of great feedback. They've been retweeted by the mayor. We got a beautiful nod from the commissioner through our social media campaign. And it's been really inspiring community members about who this plan will help and the good that will come out of this. And after we know what and where our priorities will be, it will really be helpful as we work with the public to build out our strategies and tools so that we're doing everything we can to create a city for all ages and abilities. So thanks so much.
You know. Thanks so much, Francesca. It looks like Catherine has now joined us, so I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to her now.
Thank you so much, everyone. Emily, I believe I'm showing my screen. Please confirm.
So I don't yet see it, but give me 1 second. Susan, let's see.
I see it.
Okay, yes.
Great. Well, my apologies. I had some trouble logging on, but all good now. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Catherine, and I'm with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thanks so much to America Walks for inviting us to be a part of the webinar. We've been doing some work over the last year with the Safe Routes to Parks initiative through the National Recreation and Parks Society and the Safe Routes to Schools initiative, or national partnership. So I'm going to be sharing some examples of what we did to connect people to one of our neighborhood parks in the city. But first, a little bit about the Parks Conservancy. We are a nonprofit organization that is partnered with the city of Pittsburgh to improve our park system in collaboration with our government entities and community organizations all across the city. We're just over 20 years old, and we do capital improvement project funding, fundraising, master planning, and programming. So we worked on as one of 10 pilot sites nationally that participated in a pilot of this new action framework around safe routes to parks. Our pilot site was August Wilson Park in the Hill District neighborhood of Pittsburgh. And as you can see from this graphic, there are really 5 elements that each of the pilot sites was looking at over the course of about a year. Safety, convenience, access and design, conditions, and then what happens within the park, the quality of the facilities, the amenities, and the programs, and how those are connected to serving community needs. So August Wilson Park had recently on a renovation, a complete renovation. The planning process was done over the course of several years, and it was highly community driven. It was initiated by community organizations, and then city planning and other entities kind of came in and worked with community organizations to redesign the park. And that was completed in 2016. And it's located in an area of very high need, but the park is kind of tucked away physically on a side street. And so there's some low visibility, and we chose this as a pilot site for safe routes to help us think about community connectivity and making sure that people had access to this new resource. So we started off with our assessment phase, and one of the tools that we relied heavily on was looking at a neighborhood survey. It was part of a multi-year research study conducted by the RAND Corporation, and so we were able to look at some baseline data that informed what kinds of activities we were going to be doing for safe routes, and also, of course, analyzing pre-existing plans, because we didn't want to reinvent any work that had already been done. There were already multiple recommendations around neighborhood connectivity. So from the neighborhood survey, we learned that several hundred households participated, and we learned that park use was very low. Many people reporting that they never visit parks in their neighborhood. A small portion reporting that they use parks occasionally, once a month, and only a small portion using them more than once or twice a week. But on the flip side, the survey showed that there was a sense that walking in the neighborhood and pedestrian safety people were relatively comfortable with that. So, for example, feeling safe during the day, walking in the neighborhood, a large portion of the people either agreed or strongly agreed. Feeling like there were crosswalks and pedestrian signals in key places, and that parks actually, ironically, are not difficult to get to. The majority disagreed with the statement parks in your neighborhood are difficult to get to. So we kind of scratched our heads and said, okay, well, how can we use this opportunity of looking at pedestrian access and sort of the culture of physical activity in the neighborhood, and as a way of figuring out how can we re-engage people in their park spaces that are right in the neighborhood to enhance the levels of physical activity as well as just overall personal wellness of being outdoors and through being outside in the parks. So we, with our group of community leaders that we had on an advisory team, we decided to conduct walking audits with youth and do some park activation activities to really encourage coming out, seeing the new renovated space, and we wanted to connect people of all ages through that process. So for our youth walking audits, we found a resource through the Safe Routes to Parks resource guide, which there's a link on your screen. Really fantastic resource that's been pulled together that has resources not only for looking at parks, but really for looking at all aspects of mobility in a community. So we found a tool that was specifically geared towards youth. I also included a link to that tool, the Walk Friendly Community Assessment for Teens. And we really felt that we wanted this primarily to be fun, also to be educational, of course, for the youth, but and kind of another important goal being that that we would gather information that was impactful and that would inform actionable steps moving forward. So we utilized that the walking audit tool and modified some of the questions, but this is a sample of the format of the questions. So very easy language. They were not technical, but yet all of the potential answers really were informative for us. So we also we added some questions to sort of engage the young people for them to think about, well, how am I using parks and what do I like to do there? What would make me and also having them think about where and how often they walk around their neighborhood. So those were sort of questions above and beyond what were actually on the audit sheet, but it was just an educational tool and of course very informative for us too. And then we, again, this really fun. So instead of just having the group walk down the street with clipboards and kind of filling out a form and filling out the checklist, we added in a few elements to make it more engaging. So we did 2 walking audits, one with a younger group of students, they were 3rd through 5th grade, and one with an older group of students that were 6th through 8th grade. And for both groups, we had a couple of the students or the young people, it wasn't a school group, it was an after school group, wearing GoPro cameras, which they thought they got a big kick out of and had a lot of fun with that. And it turned out that was not only a fun, engaging thing for them to do, but it was a really great data collection tool, because when we got to stopping points and we were having discussion, we could actually record that discussion and not worry about capturing every detail of what the participants were discussing. We could later go back and transcribe all that information. So that was really helpful. And then below you can see a couple of the screenshot photos that were also taken with that camera. So with the younger group, we utilized sidewalk chalk as we were going along, and they were marking different points of that we were discussing, like things like cracks in the sidewalk or potholes, things like that. Obviously, we didn't have them in the middle of the street marking things with chalk, but they were marking things along the sidewalk. and that was engaging for them. And then for the older ones, we actually set up a geocache course so that they were just really engaged in that activity, but there were stopping points, and inside every cache box was the next sort of question in our survey and a discussion question of some kind. And then there was also an element of creating or solving a puzzle throughout the geocache course. So a lot of fun. We were able to capture a lot of information about the youth perspective, especially, lots of different opinions. And with that GoPro camera recording all of the discussion, we were able to capture that, which was really nice. We came up with some good recommendations for crosswalks that needed to be painted and some other things. Again, that GoPro, I would do that again. It was a lot of fun, and the kids they really loved it. And then afterwards, we used just Google Maps to create a little record. This is one sample of what was created, where we put little icons on both positive and negative things, like needing to paint a crosswalk or noting where sidewalks were new or in good condition. Or where sidewalks were missing. And so the participants were able to inform this type of map, and it was a really easy and free tool that we used to later report out and kind of capture the information. We also learned that we didn't schedule sufficient time, and it was a bit rushed at the end. So our walk, which was approximately about a half a mile total. It was fairly short, but we probably needed at least an hour and a half to 2 hours to really get through all the discussion and filling out the survey and all of that. So as far as park activation, when we group that there was a need and a desire for some programming geared toward older adults. So in August Wilson Park in particular, we started what's called Art in the Park, which was a weekly gathering at August Wilson Park. There was a senior center that participated. It was open to the public, but more regularly, a senior center that was nearby was coming with a group of people. And then we also developed a relationship with an organization serving adults with disabilities. And so they were coming regularly to Art in the Park. And what was interesting was that even though that was a sitting activity primarily, it was sort of a gateway to get them interested and coming to the park itself, and then being active while there. So walking on those accessible paths and really enjoying being outdoors. That was a really great experience. And then our Healthy, Active, and Green programming is also geared toward older adults. And we've been developing a range of offerings for a variety of levels of physical activity. And some of the most popular ones are the fitness walks, where they're not necessarily themed other than just getting outside and having that social aspect and walking together. And of course, the groups always, whenever the participants come, they kind of gauge the level of the group and choose the appropriate length and pace and trail or pathway that fits with the group. So those are some of the things that we worked on through our Safe Routes to Parks. And if anyone has questions about any of the resources that we used or has questions in general about parks and activating communities, I'll be happy to answer them later or by email.
Thanks so much, Catherine. So I understand that Richard is in the process of joining us, but while we're waiting for him to log on, I would like to go ahead and get to a few of your questions related to the two panels who've spoken so far. First off, Francesca, what ways do you specifically engage seniors in your efforts? And I would add to the question, what might you be doing to engage children and youth as well? And or first off, have you specifically engaged those groups? And then beyond that, what sorts of initiatives do you use to engage them?
It's a great question. So last summer was when we ran our big pedestrian priorities survey, and that was all summer long. So we went to tons of different community organizations and events, like basically everything possible that we could go to. We have been working really carefully with the City of Portland Commission on Disabilities and taking direction and work and help and guidance from them too. So we've actually empowered our 25 community advisory committee members with many connections in the community, with schools, with senior centers, all sorts of different groups and organizations that they're a part of. They got little packets of swag, so like our postcards saying how to take our online survey, with t-shirts to give out that say PED-PDX and have our website on them, and little blinky lights. And they were a part of also boots on the ground, members of their own community, getting out to all of these different locations to gather feedback and help people to weigh in. We, in addition, did a youth engagement that was really fun. We thought we would change up, kind of take our online survey questions and make it physical. So I could show you a photo if you wanted to give me the screen. I could show you. Here's everyone helping out, and in the top left corner here we have the youth engagement, where students in a summer program with the Parks Bureau came out and answered our online survey questions in a physical format. So we set up easels with the numbers 1 through 6. It corresponded to the same way people would answer the questions online, but we wanted to make it fun and engaging for the high school students here to participate in that. So moving forward, there's a lot more intentionality that we can do with, especially building our toolkit, which is about, including in our whole pedestrian plan strategies that we can do, which might be like things that we could do to improve slick surfaces downtown. That's something that we heard in response to Matthew's video. If you go to pedpdx.com and watch Matthew's video, folks had concerns about that for him. It really grew some compassion. So we want to get out to different communities and gather feedback from folks.
Great, thanks, Francesca. Catherine, a question for you. Is Safe Routes to Parks a new program? And if so, is it nationwide?
It is a relatively new program. My understanding is that the National Recreation and Park Association launched it in 2017, and ran that the first 10 pilots. And then that was a technical assistance opportunity, and those pilot sites were national, located in different states. And they more recently ran a grant opportunity where they offered some funding in association to the technical assistance grant that I'm not sure how many sites were a part of that or if they've even been awarded yet, but that was run, that grant opportunity was run recently. So if anyone is on the call is interested in that, they can go to that website, the nrpta.org, Safe Routes to Parks website, and find out, or contact the Safe Route to Schools National Partnership as well.
Okay, here's a question for both of you from someone interested in your ideas for incentives and incentives beyond water bottles and t-shirts.
Sure, I can speak to that. For us, we had a lot of success using this kind of model where we empowered our community advisory committee and other supporters to help us get the word out. There's a lot more incentive to help, participate if a friend or colleague or someone from the community is asking you to participate, and it's not just a city employee. Also, we did kind of a fun activity with jars at the event, so folks could show us their prioritization of all these different factors that we had. And I heard over and over again, it was just a lot of fun. It was a challenge for people to, figure out what was more of a priority than other things that are also serious and priorities. But just having that interactivity encouraged people to actually want to participate at these events. So, beyond the kind of incentives with that, but we also gave prizes to people who took our online survey. So we said, take our online survey, tell us your priorities, and enter to win. And then we handed out, we mailed out a bunch of packets of fun things. We gave away a Fitbit. And then we had those folks, if they could tweet us and, take photos and put it on Instagram with our hashtag so that they could help encourage other people to take the survey. So we didn't wait all the way till the end to hand out those prizes. Thanks.
Okay, one more, and then I believe Richard will have joined us. But to both of you, I know you're both working in cities, but do you have any thoughts about creating more livable environments for all ages in more suburban or at least less densely populated areas?
So this is Francesca again. I'm just jumping in because I didn't hear Emily jumping in, or Catherine. But many years ago, I worked for a city population 6,600 people, and we worked on a plan to improve the streetscape, and that was really important. That included things like, how can we have enough lighting and benches and make it attractive for both people to want to visit, but it's good for the economy, good for the stores and shops. I think it's okay too, and what we're doing here in Ped PDX, focusing on your priorities on, where you can make the most impact, especially when money is really scarce. And in small communities, I think working on your best assets, your connections to your commercial areas, streetscape improvements, and amenities for your community members to enjoy some of the best parts of your community.
Great, thanks, Francesca. I believe Richard is on now. Susan, if you will let me know when you're ready to switch the slides to him. Okay, Richard, you're on now.
Okay. Everybody hear me okay?
Great, thanks for being here. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Sorry for the mix-up on the time on my end here, but I made it.
Okay, we're glad you're here.
All right. All right. You can see the screen with our Main Street for the Ages.
Let's see. Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, my name's Richard Zitlow, Lamar's, Iowa, northwest corner of Iowa, and involved with our local Historic Preservation Commission and also Chamber of Commerce here in town. And a couple of programs that I guess we're talking about is one of them is our Youth on Main Street program. And this got started about 5 years ago when members of the Historic Preservation Commission were in a meeting and looked around the room, and we realized that everybody in the room qualifies for a national registry of some type or other. So we thought we ought to see what we could do about involving some younger people and get some youth involved in historic preservation. So we created the Youth on Main Street program, and it's sponsored by the Lamar's Main Street program, co-sponsored with the Historic Preservation Commission, and it's endorsed by our two high schools, the public school, Lamar's Community, and then the Catholic school and Galen Catholic School. And each year, when we came up with the program, it involves the high school juniors throughout the school year. They come once a month on their early out Wednesdays and spend an hour and a half to 2 hours with us. And when we pitched this to both schools, they thought it was a great idea, and actually the students that enroll can either take it for class credit or they can use it for service hours. And each spring, we just recently completed our program, offering it to we meet with the sophomores in the springtime and have them sign up for the next year, for their junior year. And we just completed that, and we're waiting for the applications to come in. We just finished our 4th year, and so this will be starting our 5th year. This year we had 10 students involved. In the prior years, it's been anywhere from 5 to 8 students involved in the program. And these are when we try to entice them, these are some of the Lamar's trivia questions that we pose to them about what's going on in our community or some of the history of our community. When they apply, there's an application form that they fill out with a couple letters of recommendation, a written essay of why they want to take part in this program. Then their school counselor or principal needs to approve it, and then also we ask their parents to give their approval for them to spend. They are given up their early out Wednesday to spend with us for nine times out of the year. What we involve them in is a historical walking tour of our downtown. Next year, Lamar's will be 150 years old in 2019. So we're kind of starting to lead up a lot of this history to that'll kind of culminate in 2019 when we celebrate 150 years. So we have some of our Historic Preservation Commission members take them on a tour of the downtown buildings and looking at some of the history of the buildings as well as the architecture of the buildings. We are the ice cream capital of the world. The Wells Enterprises, Wells Blue Bunny ice cream, if you're familiar with that, is manufactured here. We have more ice cream come out of this town than any other single location in the world. So our state declared us the ice cream capital of the world. So one of our public art projects, you see in the picture there, we have these 5-foot tall ice cream cones. There's 55 of those around town, painted by local artists. And then we've also gotten into the alley art. You see the other murals there. So we introduced the kids to the public art projects that we have going on in town as well. One of the favorite things in our museum is we have our local experts, as we call them. One of the gentlemen, the Vandermeer Bakery that you can see on the upper left there, that's Peter Vandermeer. He's in his 80s, and when he was in high school, he worked there, and then he owned it for a while. So it's been in the family for 100 and some years. But we matched them up with several local experts, as we like to call them, people who either grew up working in those businesses or have some history with the community, and then we spend time with them at the museum so they get to know a little more up close and personal about some of the history of the community. We also spend time up on the second floors, and a lot of them have been sitting empty for 40 some years, and but still have the shop signs up there, the beauty shop, and the young man there looking at the selective service system, trying to figure out what that's all about, which is where I went and registered when I was 18 years old at that particular building. Besides the before, the empty, then we also show them what can be done with some of the renovation work that's going on, and attempting to keep the historical nature of the building as well. One of the things we ask the youth to do every year is, well, we also match them up with some people who have done some historical research or have good methods of how to find things. So, because we do ask them every year to do some type of project that enhances our community. But first we kind of have to give them the tools and the knowledge to do some of the research on it. So we get them into the old newspaper archives, and we match them up with people who have some history with the community and can point them in the right direction. And then the first year students, one of the things they found was a play that had been written about the early settlers. English were a big influence on our community. A lot of the second and third born sons from England came over to Lamar's and to a farm just outside of town and learned how to become farmers. And the instructor there was an old sea captain, and how he got to Lamar's, I don't know, but that's what we were pretty well known over in Europe for the farming community. And then they would come learn how to farm, and then they would acquire the land and kind of settle in around the community. On the public art, kind of got in history. One of the groups decided that we needed a walking tour of we have 42 buildings downtown that have murals painted on the back of them. And so they made up a walking tour brochure that you could kind of self-guide yourself around and have some information about the different murals there. And they also came up with the banner project that you see there in the picture, which turned into about a $5,000 project. That then they went and pitched that to the city and got their approval to spend some city dollars to put those up. The historical walking tour, I mentioned that we have the commission members would take them on a tour downtown. Well, they decided that the architecture is okay, interesting, but there's got to be some more human interest things that go along with taking the tour. So they came up with their addition to the tour. So now when we do the historical walking tours, it's not only architecture, but the students even went along and present some of the stories about how we got our name of Lamar's and some of the runaway horse activities. And we do have the first concrete paved street in Iowa, so learn some of that history. And an interesting lawyer that left money for a womanless library that fortunately never happened. But then the next year decided that the tour was okay, but what they came up with, they kind of turned it into a scavenger hunt and created a scavenger hunt that has initially had 15 buildings part of it. Now it's up to 29 buildings. But it's a scavenger hunt, a walking tour of downtown, and you do a little history each stop along the way. They have some historical information about that particular building, and then part of the scavenger hunt is to find something on the building itself. It's now an official event during our Ice Cream Days celebration every year during the middle of June, and people will take the scavenger hunt, and then they will turn in their answers, and then we'll pick a winner out of that, and they will win $50 worth of ice cream products from the ice cream parlor. They also kind of got into doing some research. Some of the interesting people, like mentioned the womanless library. A couple of the girls got really upset about that, so they decided they would do some research and figure out what was behind this guy's motivation. Never really could figure it out. Even the guy's wife and daughter never understood it. But the daughter being a lawyer, contested the will, and somehow the lawyer fees amounted to about how much money was left that was supposed to build the womanless library. And the Judge Bradley was during the Depression times and was threatening to be lynched by the farmers' holiday movement folks back in the early 30s. And then the Moreton Mansion, that's where it said the Captain Reynolds Moreton had his farm for the English folks to come over and learn how to become farmers. And this year's group is doing a history of our county fair. they're all 4-H members or active in the fair, so they decided they would do history of that, 150 years worth of history, and that's going to become an official. You can see one of their posters that they made up. They'll leave 10 of those all together, and they'll go up as permanent display out at the fairgrounds. And so as they completed, what we found is, they definitely have raised their interest in the community. They're more involved in it. They found it to be the history part of it. They didn't realize that Lamar's had that kind of history to it, and found that extremely interesting. We even had a couple of the girls that went off to their college interviews, and they came back and said, well, we spent more time asking them about the buildings on campus and what was behind those buildings and who built them and why, and that type of stuff. So it does spark quite a bit of interest. An outgrowth out of that is as people were seeing what we're doing and hearing the types of activities that the kids were doing, they said, well, we'd like to know that kind of information as well. So this year, we're halfway through this year, we offer what we call now the Seniors on Main Street for our 55 folks that are 55 years and older. We meet for a 6-week session. Like I say, we're halfway through our spring one. We held the first session was last fall, and we're halfway now through our spring session. And it mirrors a lot of the activities that we do with the high school kids. Do a lot of presentations from our local experts on different aspects. The meeting tomorrow is going to delve into the history of all the churches in the community, as well as the city parks and municipal parks. And so we dealt with that. We dealt with manufacturing and some of the housing, a lot of kit houses that are living here or have been built here. And we also use the scavenger hunt so we get everybody out walking through downtown. And like I said, this year there was 29 buildings. And we do offer a virtual version of that because we had a few folks that don't want to go out and walk that far. So we have a PowerPoint slideshow that we'll do the tour of them with them there. But probably the most fascinating part about the Seniors on Main Street is a lot of these folks have a lot of history in themselves with this. So the last session of the 6-week session is all they're sharing. They bring in any memorabilia they may have. Some of it ends up at the museum. Some of it we can just capture or scan and adds to our Historic Preservation Commission's photo room at the museum. But this one seems to take a lot longer for us to do the scavenger hunts or even some of the presentations because everybody starts sharing their history. So it's built a lot of sense of community around that as well. So that's kind of where we are with for our varying ages and getting them involved in the communities with our high school kids and now with the seniors. And we're being asked to do something for our millennials and the other folks in between time. So that may be the next thing that we do, particularly with our 150th anniversary coming up in a year. We'll probably expand it and offer it to different age groups.
Great. Thank you so much, Richard, Catherine, and Francesca. So it looks like we do have a little bit more time for questions. Let's see. One question that has come in for Catherine in particular is how one might go about determining what exactly people want in the parks. How did you determine that arts was something that people were interested in?
Well, in the case of August Wilson Park, there had been a neighborhood planning process that was a process that happened unfolded over the course of a couple of years, and the Parks Conservancy was actually involved. We weren't the lead, and through that planning process, it looked at sort of the neighborhood in relation to its own green space. It was the plan was ended up being called the Green Print, and because this neighborhood, if anyone's familiar with Pittsburgh topography, it's up on top of a hill. We have hills everywhere, and it's sort of there's a lot of wooded hillsides kind of hugging different parts of the neighborhood, and August Wilson Park is kind of on the edge of that. So this plan looked at how to bring some of that green space and weave it into the more densely populated and developed areas through street tree corridors and vacant lot remediation and beautification. And then August Wilson Park bubbled up. It was formerly called Cliffside Park, and actually at one time it was in such bad shape that the city had it down for decommission. But the community, through that planning process, really identified that it was a priority for them. And then through that process, there were community surveys, lots of meetings. I mean, whenever we do this kind of planning work, we try to go at it from a variety of different angles, kind of like what Francesca was getting at, that we don't just do an online survey, we don't just do a paper survey, we don't just have meetings. We do lots of different techniques to try to reach the broadest amount of people. And another really important piece of that is having an advisory team that leads and that can really inform the planning process, not just be a part of providing input, but being a part of actually crafting the approach to the process. That's really important. So we had park use surveys as well as people going out and doing park audit activities where they were surveying people at the park and also making observations. So sorry, lots of techniques, I guess, is the short answer.
Great. Here's one more question for all of you. Where would you suggest looking for funding for the types of initiatives that you've implemented in your cities?
I can answer. Oh, go ahead. Please go ahead, Richard.
I was just going to say, for our programming, basically we're here for those with youth on Main Street and seniors. It's through our Historic Preservation Commission and then through the Main Street program. You know, they've kind of worked in the budget. I mean, it's not a huge, expensive project, so that's kind of where we have our funding. So.
PDX is funded through a transportation growth management grant that we're able to apply for and get from our regional government agency. And it's administered through the Oregon Department of Transportation. That funding helped us to be able to do the community engagement that we've done, and I wish we could get more funding, but we were really grateful to America Walks for getting our micro grant award, because just with that little amount of money, we were able to use that to do the partnership with the University of Oregon class and the students that helped us really maximize the output that we could do. So I think thinking really creatively, we've been able to use a shoestring budget and maximize what we can do. You know, I forgot to mention that out of the 260 plus people who applied to be on our community advisory committee, and we were only able to take 25, we decided to make them what we called Friends of PDX. And so many came out to help volunteer to get people to take our online survey and participate in our plan. So that was something that we were able to do for free. There's lots of things like that.
And I can just say that we have a little bit of a unique funding situation for the park programming aspect in particular, where we were able to connect with an individual donor who wanted to donate a $10,000 gift, which was very generous, but really was very interested in this space and wanting it to be a successful park renovation and a successful space in the community. But it came with the caveat that we had to do a community matching campaign. And we were successful in raising a $10,000 match through lots and lots of individual donations, ranging from $5 to maybe $250, and we just kept getting those small donations in for the match, and that'll enable us to do those, like the art in the park, for the next 2 years, because it's a fairly small kind of staff time and materials input into that. So that's how we're funding art in the park and other programming.
Wonderful. That sounds great, Catherine. Well, I want to thank you again to our panelists for being here, and thanks to all of you for attending today's webinar. I want to also remind you that our next webinar in June will be called A Good Investment, The Benefits of Walkable Communities, and it's taking place June 13th, starting at 2 p.m. Eastern. We hope many of you will join us. And thanks once again to all of you for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.